How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today we're going to be...
That man with the cocainic levels of enthusiasm is called a Tavarish, and he, as you may know, has a big shop. I was at his shop several months ago, but at the time he had just moved in and his shop was completely bare. In fact, while I was there, he had just bought toilet paper for the bathroom in his shop for the first time. Big empty shop spaces like that get my mind racing with possibilities, and I wanted to contribute in some way to the filling out of this big empty blank canvas. So while I was down there, I offered to build him something that every shop needs: a workbench. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'll be making 3 workbenches for the Tavarish shop. Now technically I'm just going to be making one workbench that's 24 feet long, but because I have to transport it to Florida in the bed of my pickup, I'll be making 3 workbenches, each 8 feet long, so he can arrange them in his shop however he sees fit. He could put them in a straight line, he could put them in an L shape, he could mount one on the ceiling. I don't care, it's up to him. So that's the plan. Now let's get started on the, as Tavarish called it, bomb-ass workbench. First things first, we need to cut all this lumber down to size. If you would like to download a free set of plans for this project, you can download them from nowhere because they don't exist. I've just been working off this crude drawing, so take a screenshot now if you want to see that. Now let's move on to cutting all the half-laps and daddios, or dados if you're a normal person. I'm cutting the daddios and the table legs with the table leg pairs screwed together to make the dados as aligned as possible. So far you've just seen me make a bunch of cuts, but now it's time to actually start assemblating things all together, starting with the mainframe, not the IBM kind. Alright, I discovered a bit of a mistake I made, and it's a prime example of measure 500 times, cut once. These 2 boards are lined up here. I got these dados lined up perfectly. I got these dados lined up perfectly, but on the last one I measured wrong, and this one is an inch too far that way. So I'm going to have to carve out this bit of this board just to make these 2 line up. Yes, the board won't fit snugly in a dado that's about twice the width of the board, but I've got 5 other tightly fitting dados, so I think it'll be fine. I got to point out my mistakes because that would be a really hard thing to hide on camera. These 3 boards are the cross supports. They just slot into the dados and span the 2 halves of the frame. I'm going to glue and screw all of these in, and yes, this is side grain to end grain. It won't be that strong, but the screws should take care of anything, and that's what the dados are for. Mostly alignment, but they also help with this. Now to line up the top board. And now to take it all apart again, take all the screws out and rub glue all over the touchy bits. Now to smother all the touchy bits in glue. And put the screws back in to clamp it all down. And now that that part is did, time to assemble the legs. Each side assembly consists of these 4 pieces, and they go together like so. And the reason for those half laps up there will become apparent in a moment. First, let's screw this together and then glue it. Now to disassemble it all again and put glue on everything. Now it's all assembled and glued together, I can install it on the main frame. Again, not the IBM kind. And now you can see what the half lap joints are for. I'm just going to square this up and screw these legs on for now. I'll be smothering these joints with glue during final assembly, but first I have to get all of these workbenches down to Florida, which means I have to take the leg assemblies off to fit them in the back of my pickup. So that's why I'm just screwing everything down for now without glue. And there we go, it's on. I'll do the other one off camera because you don't need to see the same thing twice. And here it is, the finished frame. Now, as you may have noticed, if you have a keen eye, I used construction lumber for all of this. Now, I would have milled it down for extra purtiness, but my jointer is very small, my planer doesn't exist, and this is a workbench anyway. It's going to get beat up, it's going to get dirty, it's just going to be well abused. But I think these corners are just a little bit too ugly. So I'm going to cut some plywood to cover it up. I'm going to put a 4-inch strip on this side just to cover up the corner, and I'm going to put a big apron over here to not only add purtiness, but to add just a little bit of extra structural rigidity. And for this, I'm going to be using 3/4 inch maple veneer plywood. And to cut down the plywood, I might as well use the workbench I just created. In order to cut off the angle for these side aprons, I've just rigged up this quickie tapering jig for the table saw. It's just a piece of MDF, 2 carriage bolts, and a plywood crossbar. And a wrench to tighten everything down. I didn't have any wing nuts, so I'm using a wrench and some regular nuts. Now to cut. Now that all the plywood skirting's cut, the last step is to just attach it to the frame. I'll be screwing all these plywood bits from the inside as to avoid any exposed fasteners on the outside, which would be ugly. Now these little strips I'm going to glue and screw now, but the aprons I'm just going to screw on temporarily. I'll glue them in final assembly. Like I said earlier, I have to get this thing to Florida, which means I need to take the leg assemblies off to fit in the back of my pickup. So I'll do that. There! Pretty now, ain't it? And the corners are a lot stronger than they were before. Or at least they will be when I add the glue during final assembly. Now I do have one issue with this workbench as it sits right now, and it's this area right here. It's ugly. It's just unmilled construction lumber with some exposed fasteners, and it's gross to look at. Now, when I was planning this project in my head, I thought I would add a veneer of plywood on the outside of these boards to cover up all of this ugly, but I ended up scrapping that idea because in my head I was thinking, I don't want to add unnecessary complexity to something that I have to build 3 of in a couple of days. Well, now that I'm looking at it, I wish I had left that in the plans because it's hard to look at. So I'll have to do something about this later. I have 2 options. One is to come back and add a 1/4 inch of maple plywood over the outside of this and glue it on. And the second option is to do nothing and use the excuse that it's a workbench and it can be a little bit ugly. Those are my options. Now onto the top Well, this is actually the only request Freddie made at all for these workbenches, is what the top should be made out of. Let me go get it real quick. These tops are the single most expensive and single heaviest part of these workbenches. It's 2 sheets of 1/4 inch thick steel plate. I'm not exaggerating the weight of this. It is really heavy. And that is what's going to top off these workbenches. 2 2x4 sheets of steel. I gotta go get the other one now. God. There we go. These things are really heavy. Frankly, I think these workbench tops are overkill, but he wanted to weld on them or something. Maybe he wants to drive cars over them. I'm not sure, but it'll be able to withstand anything at this point. As long as he doesn't hold a torch to it, because there's wood underneath it. As far as how I'm going to attach these tops, well, I haven't decided yet. My current thought is to drill holes through the top, countersink the holes, and then just use wood screws to hold down the top. But since I haven't decided, I'm going to hold off on that because drilling holes and countersinking is a permanent operation that I cannot undo if I should decide on something else later. So I'm just going to wait, and they're going to sit on top. Their own gravity, frankly, is enough to hold them in place pretty much permanently, so I'm not really worried.
And now for some finishing touches.
Now I want to clear coat the plywood aprons on the bob to prevent them being dirty and greasy and what have you. But I don't want to just use any old varnish to do this job. No, I want to use a varnish specifically tailored to my clientele. So I'll be using Tavarish, available in stores nowhere. And here it is. The finished product. Looks pretty snazzy, doesn't it? And it's completely sturdy. Now, it's not glued together or anything yet, but I would be willing to test out the strength of it by putting the Trabant on top of it. I think it could hold that. But anyway, now all I have left to do is to make 2 more. Thankfully, I had the foresight to add a copy button under here instead of doing more manual labor. So let's give that a whirl. Yeah! See, wasn't that a lot easier than spending an extra week to make 2 more? Now all I have left to do is, but wait, there's more! I'm not going to stop at 3 workbenches. No. I'm going to build a bonus 4th workbench. Except the 4th workbench is going to be just a little bit different than these 3. Bonus workbench number 4 is going to be a Rolly mobile workstation table thingy, much like this thing that I made for my shop. Except it's going to be 4 times bigger than this, and it's going to be made almost entirely using reclaimed materials. This is a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of roughly 3/4 inch thick wood of some sort, MDF, plywood, OSB, I really have no idea, wrapped in a steel skin. This was the top of a conference table at my last job before they renovated. And then I took it home with me because they were going to throw it away. This will be the top of the mobile workstation. These are some doors with some fancy glass-etched flamingos in the middle of them. They came from Tavarish's house. When I was there several months ago, we somehow got to talking about these fancy glass-etched doors in his living room, and he not so casually mentioned how much him and his wife hate them. So I said, well, I'll take them. He said yes, and I brought them all the way back home with me in the bed of my pickup, all the way from Florida to Missouri, and now they're here. At the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with them, and he probably never expects to see them again. These will be the base of the mobile workstation. Yeah. There! It's done now. And if you think I'm going to flip it the right way up so you can see what it looks like, well, you're going to be sorely disappointed. This thing weighs 1,000,000 pounds, and I would most certainly injure myself doing that. So the next step is to disassemble it, take it to Florida, reassemble it, and flip it the right way up with someone else's help. Because this is more than a one-man job. And by the way, I have to correct something I said earlier that was clearly wrong. I call these glass-edged birds flamingos. I don't know what I was thinking. They're clearly not flamingos. They're clearly cardinals. And now I'm left with the unenviable task of dismantling all of this so it can fit in the back of my pickup for its trip to Florida. Like some sort of massive industrial IKEA furniture or something. Done. And just like that, I'm in the big Tavarish shop. And here's the workbench in bits. And there's the Tavarish. Not so much in bits. Now obviously it's time to start putting all this crap back together, but I'm going to start with this mobile workbench. I'm going to put this back together first because I'm going to use this to build all the other workbenches, because aside from that floppy table over there, he doesn't have any work surfaces in his shop.
You can actually use that orange car back there.
Okay, aside from that floppy table and that orange thing over there.
Aww! I like how you repurpose everything. Is this regifting?
Think of it as reclaiming.
Reclaiming.
Yes.
Reclaimed wood.
You gave it away and now you're reclaiming it.
So how sturdy is this going to be with this filled with glass?
Glass edge strength. You know how glass doesn't flex?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect for workbenches. My face is vibrating. Now to assemble the rest of the workbenches for the second time. But this time I'm going to be using wood glue to hold everything together instead of puny little screws. So here it is, all together and in situ. As you can see, we made a few changes. First of all, and most obviously, he wanted everything painted black, so it's all painted black, including the mobile rolly bench thing. And we slapped some pegboards on the back, and to attach the steel tops, we did end up countersinking all of these holes, so you have flush mount screws and everything, and a completely worn out countersink bit. So, Freddie, after all, these workbenches are for your shop.
Yes.
What do you think of them?
Dude, these are amazing. I love these so much. The BAWB, the whole branding exercise. You should make these. You should like actually mass produce these, even though these were technically mass produced.
So just quit. Yes. So just quit what I'm doing now and start making workbenches, just selling them.
I think you should just make workbenches for my shop. Just keep making these. I love these workbenches, dude. Thank you so much for coming by. And I'm gonna have to ask you to leave though.
Oh, okay. I can't just stick around and use them.
No,
I gotta.
No.
Okay.